Blazing Saddles. 12 behind-the-scenes stories of Mel Brooks' absurdist Western classic. First, a little background. Blazing Saddles is a 1974 Western satire about a black sheriff named Black Bart, Cleavon Little, appointed to save a town with the help of the drunken gunslinger the Waco Kid, Gene Wilder. The film ridicules Western tropes and racial bigotry, while firing off both cheap and brilliant jokes and pushing the 1970s limits of acceptable language. Mel Brooks directed, co-wrote and starred in 4 roles, and the film came out of nowhere to earn 3 Academy Awards, become one of the biggest box office hits of the 1970s, and land high on the American Film Institute's 100 Years 100 Laughs list of the greatest movie comedies. 1. It owes a debt to Malcolm X. The idea for Blazing Saddles originated with Andrew Bergman, who was only in his 20s. He named his character after Malcolm X, who later took the name LHAJJ Malik El Shabazz. I wrote a first draft called Tex X. He told creative screenwriting in 2016. Alan Arkin was hired to direct and James Earl Jones was going to play the sheriff. That fell apart, as things often do. Then I got a call saying, "What do you think about Mel Brooks?" I was 26 years old and I said, "I love Mel Brooks." We spoke and Mel told me that he loved the idea and wanted to use it as a launching point to do a Western. I thought, let's do it. Let's cook. Brooks told Playboy in 1975. What grabbed me were the possibilities of a modern black man arriving in the traditional West. We called in Norman Steinberg and Alan Uger, a Jewish comedy team, and Richard Pryor, a black person of our imagination. Then we turned on the tape recorder and started bullsing. Pryor wrote the Jewish jokes. The Jews wrote the black jokes. 9 months later, we had a finished script. 2. The Blazing Saddles writers were either untested or on the skids. When it was released in 1974, Blazing Saddles became a huge hit that opened the door to other rapid-fire, irreverent comedies like Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein, and later Airplane, Top Secret and The Naked Gun. But when Brooks and his co-writers first assembled, none were in demand. In the 2014 biography Becoming Richard Pryor, by Scott Saul writes, Steinberg was a fledgling film writer with no film credits. Bergman, a history PhD who had just failed to land an academic job. Brooks felt himself washed up after the disappointments of the producers and the 12 chairs. Brooks wrote in his 2020 memoir All About Me, "The producers and the 12 chairs together didn't make me enough money to buy a new car." 3. Richard Pryor was reinventing himself during the writing process. Pryor, meanwhile, was in the midst of a career rediscovery. He was taking large amounts of cocaine after abandoning a middle-of-the-road act often compared to Bill Cosby's in favor of new, blunt, sometimes surreal routines that didn't hide from his roots, and took inspiration from the Black Panthers and far-left figures in Berkeley, where he had recently lived. 4. Blazing Saddles was supposed to be an esoteric little picture. The writers decided to write what they really wanted to write, without worrying about the mainstream. Brooks told Playboy, "It was designed as an esoteric little picture. We wrote it for 2 weirdos in the balcony. For radicals, film nuts, guys who draw on the washroom wall, my kind of people." 5. Richard Pryor had some demands. The 2014 biography Becoming Richard Pryor, by Scott Saul, details Richard Pryor's demands when he traveled from Los Angeles to New York to join Mel Brooks and his team on Blazing Saddles. Train fare and a bottle of brandy waiting for him in the writer's room. When Pryor arrived at the Warner Bros. Building at 666 Fifth Avenue, Saul writes, he settled into his chair in the 6th-floor executive conference room. Brooks started to explain how the film was shifting from its original conception. While he listened, Richard pulled out a little locket, opened it, tipped out some coke, and snorted it without missing a beat. He offered some to Brooks, who quipped, Never before lunch. 6. Richard Pryor blessed the N-word. According to Mel Brooks, Scott Solace becoming Richard Pryor details how crucial the stand-up comedian and budding movie star was to the writing of Blazing Saddles. The film has 5 credited screenwriters, including Brooks and Pryor. And one of the writers, Andrew Bergman, is quoted saying in the book, "If you have 3 Jews in a room, you're going to be very skittish about writing jokes about a black man. What's permissible? What isn't permissible? Richie gave us license, which was an enormous gift." Brooks added, "I said, I can say the N-word. I need him, he has to bless it. I need a black guy to bless that word." Brooks said on the 40th anniversary Blu-ray release of the film in 2014, "When I thought it was getting to be too much," Richard said, "No. We are writing a story of racial prejudice. That's the word. The only word. It's profound. It's real. And the more we use it from the rednecks, the more the victory of the black sheriff will resonate." 7. But Pryor didn't just write about race. In becoming Richard Pryor, Saul quotes Brooks saying Pryor was especially interested in the Mongo character played by Alex Karras. "He came up with crazy stuff like Mongo only pawn in Game of Life," Brooks said. 8. Madeline Kahn objected to showing her legs in her audition for the role of Lily Vaughn. SHTUPP. Brooks said in the Blu-ray that when he asked Madeline Kahn to see her legs, she replied, "So it's that kind of an audition." He added, "I explained that I was a happily married man, and I needed someone who could straddle a chair with her legs like Marlene Dietrich in Destiny Rides Again. So she lifted her skirt and said, 'No touching.' She got the part." 9. Richard Pryor was denied the Black Bart role because of cocaine. Mel Brooks explained 20 years after the film's release that Warner Bros. refused to give Pryor the role of Black Bart, which Pryor had written for himself, because he was a known sniffer, according to Solace becoming Richard Pryor. Bergman elaborates in the book, "Warner Bros. wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole because his reputation was so dubious. In terms of reliability, Saul notes that Pryor had recently experienced what the author calls a coke-fueled crack-up on the set of Michael Campa's crime drama The Mac. And it is likely that studio executives had gotten word of it. The role went to Cleavon little above right, with Gene Wilder, who was great. And 3 years later, Pryor would pair with Little's on-screen partner, Gene Wilder, in Silver Streak, the first of Pryor and Wilder's for on-screen film pairings. 10. Blazing Saddles almost wasn't released. When we screened it for executives, there were few laughs, Brooks said in the Blu-ray. He added that Warner Bros. executives opined, "It's simply too vulgar for the American people. Let's dump it and take a loss." But Brooks said that studio president John Calley decided to open it in 3 cities, New York, Los Angeles and Chicago, as a trial. And it became the studio's top money maker that summer. 11. Executive ordered the removal of the N-word and flatulence sound effects. Brooks also said in the Blu-ray edition that, following a sneak preview, Warner Bros. Chairman Ted Ashley called for several cuts, including of the racial slur and the flatulence noises. When he left, I crumpled up all of my notes and threw the wad into a wastebasket. I didn't cut a sentence or a word or even an expression on anybody's face, Brooks said. 12. Mel Brooks considers Blazing Saddles the funniest movie ever made. The American Film Institute ranks Blazing Saddles as the 6th funniest movie of all time. But Mel Brooks disagrees. "I love Some Like It Hot, but we have the funniest movie ever made," Brooks told Vanity Fair in 2016. The 5 films that landed ahead of Blazing Saddles on AFI's list were, from 1st to 5th, Some Like It Hot, Tootsie, Dr. Strangelove, Annie Hall, and Duck Soup.